Lately, I've been very inspired by the book here that's on the altar, um, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. But a couple of the quotes and the ideas in Ayer's book keep coming back to me. And in fact, I I read the book and then I just turned it over and started it again and read it through twice. And I'm ready for a third reading. And so some of the things in well, I'll read in just a little bit, a couple of the quotes that come from the book. But it got me thinking about dichotomy and dichotomy of spiritual life and everyday life. And so I was thinking, well, why do we go to places like the ashram or meditation centers or retreats? Like, why do we do that? And and um, I mean, I think we go because we want to be inspired, we want to learn, or maybe we don't have a clue, but our daughter is at one, so we want to go find out where she is. Or a friend tells you about some place where they've been and it sounds really interesting, so you think you'll give it a try. Um, and sometimes there's a very clear reason. Um, Sometimes it because there's a really deep question that we're holding, or we're in transition, or we're looking for some support in healing, um, or we're just curious. And so that reason becomes like a magnet, even if in the beginning we're not so aware that that's why we're drawn to places like ashrams, retreat centers, meditation centers. But so can I can I'll speak now about the ashram, and as people, as I'm watching over the years people being drawn here, um, there's a really deep learning that happens, a learning about oneself, the learning about other people. Um, there's practices that are learned when people come here. Um, and also we tend to develop what I'll call ideals about how we want to live in the world, like what we want to take back with us as we leave and go out into the world. And so there's a little bit of a trick here. And the trick is that we can be very inspired and fired up, and we're going to go out and we're going to live a very different kind of life. And then we meet the world and something happens. And usually it's like, whoa, what happened? I had these ideals, I had these wonderful ideas and this wonderful experience when I was at the ashram or the retreat center or wherever. And now suddenly, ooh, like what happened? And so we come face to face with the dilemma that all of us live with. And that is living a spiritual life and facing the world. And so I'm just going to read a short quote from another one from Radhananda, where she talks about that. She says, let me find it here. Yeah, we live in the world with other people, and it's usually the small things that interfere with the calm, practiced mind and can cause a storm of emotions. And she says it could be a reaction to messy dishes in the sink, or somebody barges in when you're in the middle of a practice, a conversation, or the driver in the next lane who does not signal. They all expose our ability to control our mind. Everyone meets a crisis from little disturbances to larger life events. So, um, in this book that I've been reading, it's called A Flame, as one word, a flame, learning from silence. And the author, Pico Iyer, if you have not read any of his work, he's fantastic, both as a novelist and also a writer in magazines, a lot of travel magazines and the New Yorker and many, many years that he has been reporting. So every year he spends time at two different places. So one is a Zen monastery that's north of San Francisco. He lives in Japan, north of San Francisco. Or there's a place by Big Sur in California, which is a hermitage, and it's a group of Catholic brothers, but very open to any spiritual traditions or none at all. And he goes into these long periods of silence to renew and restore himself, and then he goes back out into the world on airplanes and hotels and back to Japan and wherever, and then he comes back to renew himself. So he goes to the Zen monastery and has a friendship with the abbess there. And there are two quotes that he offers in the book that come from her. She says, "You can't live on Everest. It's got no snack bar. You have to come back and do the dishes." And I thought, "But I just love that. Okay, can't live on Everest." And often you can't live for long at an ashram or a retreat center. You've got to go out. We've all had to go out and test out what it is that we think we know. And so the second quote is very interesting to me, this dual citizenship between stars and the stones. So it's like the grounding of the stones and the uplift of the stars. And that's what we're always trying to do, is find our way between those realities. So sometimes people say things like, "Oh, I wish I could live at the ashram forever." And that would be okay, I guess. But it's not like this is life. And it may not appear that way, but this is just as much life as anywhere else. Someone doesn't do the dishes, someone puts something on the floor, doesn't pick it up, whatever, whatever it is. So our learning and our ideals and our concepts have to be tested. So this is just life. We have to test them. And one of the things that I find, what I would call the hard work, is the suffering in the world, the wars in the world, and my relationship to all of that. And finding my way to stay open and to not become divided, to not become angry, to not become having sleepless nights, which I was for a while. But how do I keep offering? How do I keep loving through the reality of so much that is out in the world that seems so contrary to what my own ideals are and how I want to live? And one of the things that Iyer says in his book, he talks about needing to return to commitment and discipline over and over again. And he said it's the practice that becomes our spiritual director. And I just really like that. It's like, yes, we can have people that inspire us, that help us keep going, but actually it's our own practice and our own commitment to it, whatever that practice is, that becomes our spiritual director. And a final quote from Swami Radha, she says, there are two realities. We live in those two realities. The reality of the world as it is, and the reality of the awareness of your mind. It's quite a job to courageously face the facts of the world and yet aim for higher consciousness. And um, so I've been thinking about all of this through my through my second, and I'm going to be going on to my third read of this book. Um, and one of the things that comes to my mind, and some of you that have been here for a long time have heard this story, so bear with me. But it's one of my all-time favorites. So on the altar, I've brought a deity, um, and that deity's name is Avalokitesvara, or in Tibet, it's called he's called Shenrez, and sometimes he has 2 arms, sometimes he has 4. In this picture, he has 8, but you may recognize him as the 1,000-armed Buddha. So I wanted to bring, we have a statue of our many mansions. It's about like this of Avalokitesvara, but he's too heavy. I couldn't bring him over, but anyway, sometime maybe he'll make it here. But so here's the story. So he is a Buddhist, and he's what's called a bodhisattva. So he will not leave and go into his own state of enlightenment or beyond or whatever that is until everybody in the world is saved, has found the light or has found the Buddha or whatever name we want to give to that. So he says, I'm going to meditate, and I'm going to meditate for the world, and I will meditate until everybody in the world is enlightened. So he goes into meditation, and he meditates for years and years and years. And finally, one day he opens his eyes and he sees that nothing has changed. And his head bursts into pieces. And the Buddha comes and puts him back together again. But he gives him 11 heads so that he can always keep his eye out for humanity, regardless of what is happening in the world. But he will continue to give his blessings, the light, encouragement to the whole world. And to crown it, the Buddha puts his own head on the very top. So when you come up tonight, you can take a look. It's one of my favorite pictures. And it just reminds me also of what we do every night here in satsang with the prayer list and with mantra. You know, our mantra is not going to stop the war in the Middle East. It's not going to stop the war between Russia and or in Sudan or Ukraine. But we continue to send that light out. And we don't know what's going to happen for these 700, 800 people that are on the prayer list. I mean, we don't know, but we're offering that support and that encouragement. So I always feel like that's a direct connection back to Avalokitesvara. We don't know, but we're going to continue, as we do every night, making that offering.